Right, what's going on? Good afternoon, Tuesday. Welcome to a whole lot of Zep channel. I'm Rick. We're going to be doing Led Zeppelin 3 retrospective with spinning Led Zeppelin diecast on a turntable. So let's just get right into it and learn a little bit more about Led Zeppelin as we do Led Zeppelin 3, a retrospective.
This is a number about a dog who died. In fact, he lives on the Bradley Road, about 40 miles away. Is he still going? It was a black Labrador.
Okay, so you heard a little bit of the opening to Led Zeppelin 3, the very first song, the Immigrant Song. Robert Plant's voice, like a screaming banshee. Led Zeppelin 3 came in and turned rockabilly and rock blues on its head. Led Zeppelin 3, for all intent purposes, is a great album. And so we have the media who has been just bashing Led Zeppelin left and right. When Led Zeppelin 3 came out, it took a little bit longer for the reviewers and the media to catch up with what they were doing. So what happened was, after they did their unrelentless tour of their first two albums from 68 to early 70. And in that time, they managed, when they were on tour for their Led Zeppelin 1 album, they were recording their Led Zeppelin 2 album while they were on the road. So they put two albums under their belt in as many years. So at the end of 69 and the beginning of 70, Led Zeppelin, the band members decided to go to a cottage called Headley Grange. It was a country house. And they also used the Rolling Stones mobile studio so they can play outside as well. And some of their early songs, if you listen on Physical Graffiti, a couple of their songs, you can hear one of the technicians saying to Jimmy that there's a plane up in the air, and Jimmy's response said, "No, yeah, leave it," because he wanted to capture the essence of everything that was going on. So why not have that plane in the background recording? It was there. It puts you right there while they were recording it. And that's what Jimmy Page wanted. So now the band is at this cottage, Headley Grange, where all the band members got together and really got to know each other quite well. And this is where they really developed and honed in on their skills and musicianship towards one another. They did go on a softer side with this album. They did do more acoustic. However, there's still a lot of electric to be heard on this album. It's not a total acoustic album. They just turned everything on their heads. They incorporated rockabilly, they incorporated blues, they incorporated English folk, and they combined all of it on this album. And they came out with such a tremendous work of art. Some of the songs did not work for this album, so they were shelved for a later date. They did a lot of recordings here, and like I said, the Zeppelin 3 was not very well perceived by the media. And this is where they learned, the rest of the band learned, Jimmy knew that John Paul Jones was more than just a bass player. This guy, he emerged as a multi-talented instrumentalist. Not just the keyboard and stringed instruments. He did the synthesizers, the mandolin, and the double bass. In addition to just using a regular bass guitar. And that alone right there was a big help to them when they were doing live tracks and they were doing their acoustic sets. John Paul Jones could sit in and he could play just about anything to accompany Jimmy Page. And they rearranged some of their acoustic songs live so many times to keep it fresh. And also, Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones would switch up instruments. Sometimes Jimmy Page would play the banjo while John Paul Jones was playing one of his acoustic guitars, his triple neck acoustic. But they would rearrange their songs. You still knew what they were. You recognized them right away, but they would rearrange them differently and keep everything fresh so they wouldn't get bored with playing their music. And it just sounded good every time. You can hear on almost any bootleg album the song that they constantly rearranged. You can hear it from album to album on their bootlegs. But by large and far, the Immigrant Song was the song that drove the album, and subsequently, that was the song that they, in the early days of Led Zeppelin, that's what they started off with. They opened up with the Immigrant Song. Gallows Pole, That's the Way. They were more English folk type. The Gallows Pole was actually it was an interpretation on a traditional folk song by the way of a singer called Fred Gerlach. And Hats Off to Roy Harper was a reworking of a blues song by a guy by the name of Bucka White. And the acoustic material that was from a songwriting session between Plant and Page at Bronyar, which was another cottage in Wales, which basically influenced a lot of the music off of that album. It was one of the most anticipated albums of 1970. It didn't get released until October 7th. There's quite a bit of noise going on the album cover, as you really don't see the remnants of the Led Zeppelin crashing down, burning, or the Led Zeppelin flying high above with spotlights shining on it on an inner sleeve cover. This one was just all hippie psychedelic. And the guy that they used to do the album cover was one of Jimmy Page's bandmates from the Yardbirds, who helped him create this sleeve cover, or the album artwork. And so the place is called Headley Grange. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. People across the pond might be able to help me out with the pronunciation. So in Headley Grange, there's a cottage. Well, Headley Grange is one of the places where they recorded along with the Rolling Stones mobile unit, and they were in Wales at Bronyar Cottage. Robert Plant and Jimmy Page decided to have a holiday at this cottage, and they basically, just the two of them, they worked out the beginnings of Stairway to Heaven. Jimmy Page had approached Robert Plant and said, "Here's something I've been working on, and what do you think of it?" And within the time that Jimmy Page had started playing the intro to Stairway to Heaven, Robert Plant walked away and came back 20 minutes later with the first, second, and third verse to Stairway to Heaven. That's how in tune these guys were with one another. And it all starts with how well you can connect with that other person. If you can connect with the people that you're working with, the sky's the limits. And when they all got together and started recording, they are now a much tighter unit. They can not only play hard rock, hard blues, slow blues, country and folk, rockabilly, straight on hard rock. This band combined all of that to create such a unique sound, and it was all theirs, and it's just unmistakable. When you hear a Led Zeppelin song, whether you've heard it before or not, you know it's Led Zeppelin by the tone of it, and the punch, and the softness, and the light and the shade. Jimmy Page was phenomenal with how he could build up a song, and he did it frequently. He did it with songs on Led Zeppelin 1, he did it with songs on Zeppelin 2. But Zeppelin 3 is where they shined. And this is also where it really came to an end with Led Zeppelin and the media, because the media just hammered them in this album so badly. And it actually became one of the top selling albums in 1970. So go figure that. And ironically, where they wrote most of the material for Zeppelin 3, a lot of material for Zeppelin 4 and Physical Graffiti came out of this cottage. And they had managed to get a couple influences in on their music as well. Robert Plant's songwriting styles, Jimmy Page, his influences by folk guitarists Davy Graham and Bert Jansch. Those two regularly used alternative guitar tunings, and Jimmy was very interested in that, and he created some of his own tunings as well. And he was obsessed with change, and the direction the band would go in. But he would take the band in a direction, and it was a smooth transition. They had such a multiple array of styles in music, and the acoustic songs on Led Zeppelin 3 are just another example of how talented this band has become in under 3 years. With what they were putting together, and basically touring off of these 3 albums, and they learned in the early days how to be a jam band so they could fill in time with their music, especially in the early days when they didn't really have many songs to go off of. They were starting to do cover tunes, and then they would break into long solos. Dazed and Confused was a big one at the beginning. That filled in a lot of time, and it wasn't just filler, it was music. It was something to be seen, it was something to be felt, heard, and touched. I would never know this personally because I've never had the opportunity to see them live all together, only from what other people have told me, that what you hear live on a bootlegged album pales in comparison to being there at a Led Zeppelin concert. It is something to experience unto itself. And if you were fortunate enough to see them, my hat's off to you. I only could wish that I would have been able to see the band. I was lucky enough to see Jimmy Page, and that was a big moment for me. But here we are with Led Zeppelin 3, and and the design sleeve held up production and caused a 2-month delay because of all the stuff that they wanted to add into it, which is kind of funny. In the run-up to the release, the group brought a full-page advertisement in Melody Maker magazine at the end of September, which simply said, "Thank you for making us the world's #1 band." The album was released in the US on October 5th and then in the UK on October 23rd. It immediately topped the British charts. Unfortunately, the musical boundaries were meted with warm detractors, and they attacked the heavier tracks as being mindless noise. And so Led Zeppelin, hearing things like this, they were just like, well, forget it. We don't need the media to have them tell our fans how good we are. We will let the fans tell us how good we are, not have the media step in between and say this is what you should be listening to and this is crap, you shouldn't be listening to this. So Led Zeppelin just said, screw it. We're just going to let our albums speak for themselves. We aren't doing 45s. And like I said on a previous retrospective, the only 45 they released was Hey Hey What Can I Do, and it was on the flip side of the Immigrant Song. And if Robert Plant's voice sounds slightly modified in that song, the reason it does is because Jimmy Page slowed it down, I believe a 16th on the recording, just enough to bring Robert Plant's voice tone down a little bit. Whatever he did, it worked. But if you have any intentions, if you are a guitar player and you have intentions of playing along with that song, you're going to have to figure out what chords to use to make it sound just the way it did on the track. It is in the key of A, but if you play a basic A chord, it's not going to sound right because he dropped the tuning of the whole song in the recording studio. It's amazing what Jimmy Page was capable of doing. He had a knack and an ear and a presence. Some of the other critics accuse Led Zeppelin's acoustic material of imitating Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young. I mean, really? I don't think anything sounds remotely close to Crosby, Stills, and Nash and Young when they do harmonies. I did not hear any type of harmonies in Led Zeppelin unless it was Robert Plant's voice doubled over. Just that blows me away. Page has also said that the negative press given to the third album affected him so much that he did not give press interviews for 18 months after its release, adding that the criticism was one of the reasons why the following album contained no written information on the album at all, which will lead up to Led Zeppelin 4, which becomes interesting, and you'll learn more about that one shortly. Basically, what Jimmy Page later learned to believe was that journalists had little time to listen to the material that they were putting out. They were just too busy interested in the new Whole Lotta Love instead of appreciating what music they were pumping out. So rock critics really fucked up in a big way when it came to Led Zeppelin. And I know they're all eating their words and hating themselves for what they have said in the past, but you can't undo what you said, and especially when it's printed in black and white. Led Zeppelin went about their business and did their thing, and they became an iconic band. And Led Zeppelin 3 actually slammed the charts and at all odds against the critics. So Led Zeppelin was speaking loud and letting their music do all the speaking for them. And no matter how acoustic they got, they were still louder than anybody else. And I mean that in terms of we will not be silenced by the critics. That's what I mean by that. And they proved it time and again. They dictated what they wanted with their music. They would not allow any outside source to manipulate their music or try to make them go in a certain direction. They wouldn't have it. And that's why in 1975, Jimmy Page said, I've had it with the record company and the record industry. I'm creating my own label, so I have complete control and I don't have to argue with anybody over my own music. So that would be the Swan Song label, but that's for a later time. Led Zeppelin 3 had Hats Off to Roy Harper, That's the Way, Tangerine, acoustic numbers. They were all good numbers. Gallows Pole. They were just very, very talented at their craft. And to be able to rearrange things and make it their own is something that's incredible. And if it wasn't for Led Zeppelin, I believe that a lot of the blues would not be recognized today. Well, for that matter, if it hadn't been for the British invasion, we wouldn't appreciate blues music as we do today. And it took a country from across the pond for us to appreciate the music that was being played in our own backyards. Go figure. But that's my Led Zeppelin 3 retrospective. I hope you guys enjoyed it and got a little bit out of it. I'll be doing another Led Zeppelin retrospective. I'm not sure. It's definitely going to be Zeppelin 4. I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing after that. But I hope you guys enjoyed that. And again, I'm Rick. You've been watching the Whole Lot of Zepp channel and getting a Led Zeppelin 3 retrospective with some Led Zeppelin music playing in the background. I hope you found this informative and entertaining. If this isn't something you guys have an interest in, I'm not going to be offended if you tell me you'd just rather see cars and not the retrospective. I'm up for keeping my subscribers happy. I don't want to disappoint. So if this isn't something you like, please don't hesitate to let me know in the comments section. Or if you do like it, let me know in the comments section. But again, I'm Rick. You've been watching the Whole Lot of Zepp channel, and this was a Led Zeppelin 3 retrospective. Everybody stay safe, be healthy, and I'll catch you on my next video.